Welcome to the Women in AI Research podcast, the show about remarkable contributions of female AI researchers around the globe. I'm your host, Ekaterina, and I'm sharing the mic today with my co-host, Malika. Today, we are diving deep into some of the uncomfortable truths about AI trustworthiness with our guest, Anna Marasovic. I wanted to talk to her because she's not only doing cutting edge research on explainability and trustworthy AI, but she also has this great way of making complex ideas practical and useful. Anna is an assistant professor at the University of Utah. She has taught courses on generative AI and mechanistic interpretability. She has mentored students at the Women in NLP. She's recognized for her outstanding service at ACL, and she even hosted the NLP Highlights podcast, which in my opinion was one of the best podcasts about NLP, although it is not active at the moment. But back to Anna. She's worked and studied in different places like Croatia, Germany, and now she's in the US. She received funding from places like Google and the AI2. And my favorite, she shares an amazing collection of resources on her website. Everything from how to pick a good research problem to tips on work-life balance. In our conversation, Anna shares very interesting insights about model failures, practical advice on building reliable systems, and the honest guidance for AI researchers at all stages. Stick around until the end of the episode, and I will explain a problem with the chain of thought traces that you'd want to hear about before you trust them in your work. Thank you for joining us today, Anna.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Great. So before we dive into the research, I'd love to start with something slightly more personal. I have already mentioned that you have collected quite a range of various awards, from best papers to best reviewer to the Rising Star title. So if you think about these rewards not as achievements, but as reminders, which one reminds you most about why you do research in the first place?
Yeah, that's a fun question. I think I would definitely isolate the paper awards, mostly not because they're awards themselves, but rather it reminds me of these collaborations, which were all super fun collaborations. I could say friends now, but what stand out for every one of the award-winning paper that I have participated in is that it wasn't an obvious way of how to address the research question we were trying to address, or the research question itself wasn't super obvious. And it was really, really messy. And that's kind of and then I think a lot of young people, why we enter research, because you want to work on something that's a little bit more challenging, a little bit more out there. The answers aren't obvious, and every project can differ because the question itself is changing. Anecdotally, for every single one of these papers, except maybe one, I think we kind of gave up on the paper as well in the meantime. It's just funny to see that these papers that are now celebrated, they almost didn't happen. And I know from other people who have won their best paper awards that they had similar stories. So it just kind of reminds me of how messy research is. And at times that's the hardest part of doing research, right? Because there is no guarantee it's going to work out. But many times that's exactly why we do research, to find these not so obvious answers.
Nice. Such a nice story. I like it. It's not only about the messiness of the research, but like about meeting people and remembering those collaborations. Amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Heard that from someone like you who has more experience, that like you have to be more patient with all the failures and all the back and forth to get to something, and it's not just like all done in a second, which is fantastic. Thanks for the insights. And as Katerina said, you've built such an impressive academic portfolio, balancing roles as a senior area chair, teaching multiple advanced NLP courses, serving on hiring committees, organizing panels and workshops, mentoring graduate students, and even hosting the NLP Highlight podcast. Given such a wide range of responsibilities, what's something you wish more people understood about the realities of academic research life?
I think when you lay everything like that, it's kind of clear how much multitasking a researcher does. And I'm not sure that's generally clear to, just public, because when people ask me what they do, and if they are not in academia, I say, oh, I'm a professor at TU. And they're like, okay, you teach. And we continue talking about teaching. And my impression is that they think I generally just teach, which is a completely reasonable assumption. And one I was making as an undergrad student, I was like, why are my teachers so bad at teaching? This is their only job. And then I became a professor. I was like, yeah, I get it. I get why my teachers weren't fully focused on teaching. So yeah, when you lay it like that, it's clear there is a lot of multitasking, but that's not what people know. I think it might be unclear, students, why aren't we the best teachers or best researchers? I will, a lot of public, I think, think, not a lot of, like some portion of the public, I think also maybe perceives academia as something glamorous because that's how it's portrayed in Hollywood, where reality is really not that glamorous, right? It's a lot of, unfortunately, overworked people who are, before they get on tenure track and even on tenure track position, they're striving to get this, but we don't even know what we are getting into. It's not like an easy, nice thing that happens once you're on a tenure track. So yeah, we wish there is a perspective that it's not a glamorous position. I wish when we compare academia to industry, I also find it weird that as if AI industry can exist without academia, because who's going to teach all these new people, new folks, how to do AI, right? And I think from my experience, because I work on cutting edge stuff, I bring that into my teaching, and that seems to resonate with students, and I can see them becoming also better researchers. So I think you do need to have academics working on cutting edge stuff to produce new academics who then go into industry and support all the stuff we are seeing. So I also wish that perspective is not so like one or the other, because it's not a zero sum game. Yeah, and of course now in current political climate, like I wish people understand science is just trying to find truth and objective truth and evidence for stuff, and that there isn't some kind of a agenda going on.
Right. Thanks for this perspective. What resonates with me the most is probably that AI industry would not exist without academic AI research and the academia in general. And yeah, the other way around probably as well. And also following up on the question of multitasking, there is the need in academia, I believe, to balance between the research interests and the more pragmatic side, like
Yeah.
the need to find funding to publish, to align with the community trends. So how do you deal with that? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I should remind everyone who is listening that I'm just starting my fourth year as a professor, so I definitely don't have a full handle of this, and I'm definitely still learning. But you're right. There is like everyone said, oh, you can do in academia anything you want, and that's true. But if you are working in a computer science department, most likely you are mentoring students, and they are doing the heavy lifting of implementing stuff, which means that you need to raise money to support those students to actually execute and realize ideas you have. So if you would like to work on the stuff you actually want to work on, that means you need money that is supporting those ideas. And in reality, that's not trivial to achieve. So a lot of us write way more proposals than they actually get funded. And honestly, at this point of my career, it might change later, but I have no idea which ones are going to get funded and which ones won't. It's such an unpredictable game for me. And a lot of proposals we write is in collaboration with other people who maybe they work in a special domain and they're like, all right, you work on explainability. How about we bring this angle to this application domain? And although I care about maybe explainability, maybe I'm not so passionate about that application domain. And then I get funded there. And then I'm like kind of working on what I want, but also, also I'm being a little bit sidetracked in a way. So yeah, right now I'm just trying to not get lured into every single proposal. As a person who works on LLMs, you can imagine that because now LLMs, there's so many application areas. I get asked quite a lot of, would you like to collaborate on this? And it's, I think, important to be smart about, which proposals you are actually writing and try to maximize the ones where you would be actually very excited to do the work. But money is money. So, you have to also be a part of proposals that might not be super obvious how they align exactly with what you want to work on. So it's really hard, and it's kind of interesting that no one ever teaches us any of this stuff, like accounting and dealing with these kind of tactics of how to go about proposal writing. Which I don't want to make it sound as I'm suggesting we should teach and have graduate students do proposal writing, because it sidetracks you from doing research. And honestly, when I look back at my job market and my job search, the most important thing was my research. Like that was the most important thing to be really good at. And so any time spent on, proposal writing takes away from research. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, have students write, proposals, but it is interesting how much completely new stuff you need to learn once you're on a tenure track.